So in this episode, I'm going to tell you about 2 times that I got brutally fired. One of them, the way I found out, was just insane. And the other one was, it was absolutely heartbreaking. And you won't believe how it happened or who fired me. But by the end of this, you'll understand why in both cases, it actually needed to happen. So I had been hired to produce a record for a very well-known artist who was getting ready to make his sophomore album. Now, I got to tell you, this kid was a killer singer and was extremely well-known at the time. I'd say he was a bona fide celebrity. And his first record had been very well received, so the label had high expectations for his second album, which means there was a lot of pressure on both he and I. Now, I already had a great relationship with this kid because I had written a couple of songs for his first album. So we had had some success together already, and we knew each other pretty well. I would actually consider us friends at this point. You know, we had spent months together writing songs for this album. In fact, he and his band were staying at my house at the time, and we were just deeply immersed in writing and pre-production and recording. And I have to say, I really loved this kid and his entire band. They were just super cool guys that I still consider friends to this day. And we had already recorded like 16 or 17 songs, and they were really good. You know, I had brought in some of the best songwriters in the industry, and I was just extremely proud of what we had created. And so was he. In fact, he was ecstatic about it. He couldn't wait for the world to hear this stuff, which is all the more reason that it's so shocking what happened next. So we were taking about a month-long break from recording because it had been a very intense few months, and we all needed to give ourselves some space from the album before, coming back to it and putting the finishing touches on it. So I'm enjoying a little time off. I think I took a short vacation down to Mexico or something, and I was really feeling refreshed and ready to dive back in and send this record into the stratosphere. Until one morning, I wake up and I look at my phone and I check Twitter and I read a tweet from him that just confused the hell out of me. He tweeted that he was excited to announce to the world that he had been working with a great producer on his new album. But the problem is, the producer he mentioned wasn't me. He named somebody else. And I thought, what the fuck? This must be a typo. Like, there's no other explanation. But the truth is, there was another explanation. I had been fired. On Twitter. Now, my first instinct was to call him and say, dude, did you get my name wrong in that tweet? But my better judgment prevailed, and instead I called my manager, thinking that maybe he had some information that just hadn't filtered down to me yet. But my manager knew less than I did. So we called the label and asked, what's going on here? And they said, yeah, we've decided to take this artist in a different direction. Just like that. Now, of course, I was shocked and pissed. And honestly, I was pretty heartbroken because I really, really believed in this kid. I thought he had a super bright future, and I was, excited to be a part of it. But in that moment, I had to accept the fact that he didn't feel the same way. Or more likely, the label didn't feel the same way. So a few days later, my phone rings, and it's the new producer, who I knew very well. And he was obviously aware of how unpleasant it must have been for me to get fired off of this project. So I think he was trying to basically say, like, hey, no hard feelings, man. And to be honest with you, there weren't any hard feelings towards him. He's a great producer and a great writer and an all-around decent and super talented guy. But he started asking me questions about what it was like working with this guy. So it seemed like he was trying to get a sense of what he was in for. And I told him what my experience had been, which was quite good. And, we had a nice conversation. Anyway, fast forward about 6 or 8 months, and this kid's album gets released. And of course, out of sheer curiosity, I listened to the whole thing. And I got to tell you, it was really good. It was very different from the record that we were making. I'd say it was more pop than rock. And I realized in that moment, I wouldn't have been the right producer for that album anyway. The label had originally come to me asking for a real rock record. And that's what I was going to give them. That's what we recorded. But they changed their minds. And there was nothing I could do about that. I would not have been the right guy to make the record that they ended up wanting. So in the end, even though it felt just terrible and humiliating to be fired, especially on Twitter, looking back on it, it was the right call for the label and for me. So the lesson for me was that even though my ego was definitely wounded, it was more about how I found out I was fired than why I was fired. And the truth is, I'm still friendly with this artist today. He's a good kid. He's a talented kid. The industry is just a cruel place sometimes. It's not for the faint of heart. And remember that. If you're an up-and-coming artist or producer or whatever you want to be, buckle up because it can be a rough ride. Okay, now one of the only other times that I got fired while working in the music industry was a really painful one. I mean, it tore me apart, and I'll tell you why. I had been hired by an A&R guy at a major label who was a dear friend of mine. We were great pals, both at work and outside of work. I mean, we would take holidays together. We spent a ton of time with each other. And like I said, he was at a major label, so he had a very important job, and he was exceptionally good at it. And just a really cool guy. I just loved him. Anyway, he hired me to produce a band that he had just recently signed. And I already knew these guys because I had done a lot of songwriting with them. So it seemed like a natural fit when it came time to choose who should produce their record. We got along great. I loved the band. I loved them as people, and they were a killer band, amazing musicians. And the lead singer was just an absolute superstar. So when they decided to have me produce the record, I was thrilled. We had the band come out to Los Angeles, where we spent a month or so in pre-production. Writing songs and just kind of wrapping our heads around what this album was going to be. Now, to be honest with you, these guys were so good and such great songwriters that they didn't need my help writing songs, but we wrote some killer stuff together. So the album was poised to be amazing. So the time comes to start recording, and I book us into a great studio in LA, and I hired a world-class engineer. We rented tons of cool gear like vintage amps and guitars and drums, and we were just having a blast. It was like a dream situation for all of us. So we recorded nonstop for like a month or maybe even 2 months. I can't remember, but I'm telling you, we captured the magic of this band. I mean, it was awesome. Every day we would finish the session more excited than the day before. Now, unbeknownst to me, there were some changes going on at the label. I mean, this was business stuff that I was not aware of. And to this day, to be honest with you, I still don't know exactly what happened. But one day, I get a call from my buddy, the A&R guy, and I could tell something was up. He just wasn't himself. And he wasn't sharing any real info with me. He was just different. He was off. And he starts grilling me on really unusual things like guitar tones and recording techniques. It was like all of a sudden he had lost confidence in my ability to do what I do. And I thought to myself, why is he asking me about this stuff when he hasn't even heard what we recorded yet? He just seemed really worried or insecure. You know, it felt like he was questioning his decision to have me produce the record. He didn't come right out and say it, but I could tell that's where this was heading. So anyway, long story short, about 2 weeks later, I get the call. And it's him. And he's like, dude, we've decided to take this in a different direction. We're going with a major producer. And that major producer was a huge name producer. I mean, even if you're not in the music industry, you would recognize his name. Lots of album credits, lots of success. Anyway, needless to say, I was devastated. I loved this band. I loved the album that we were making. And I loved the guy that just fired me. Truly. So I never really learned the true story of what happened at the label. Like why all of a sudden he lost confidence in me. But it felt like such an injustice. They hadn't even heard the record we were making. And it felt like it was just all based on the fact that I didn't have the name recognition that this big-time producer had. And listen, if I was this band and I got the chance to work with this producer, I'd jump on it. And to be honest with you, I can't blame my buddy, the A&R guy, either. I mean, we're all just trying to be successful. But man, I was heartbroken and humiliated. I felt ashamed. I don't know why. It was like I felt like I had done something wrong. And what made it worse was these were all friends of mine. Truly. So it took me a while to get over the pain of that one. But here's the good news. They went ahead and made a beautiful record with this producer. They had an amazing experience. So while I didn't get to share in that excitement, I was able to watch my friends go on to have a great career. And the cool thing is, I still have the album we made. Even though the world is never going to hear it, sometimes I still put it on and, man, I'm proud of it. It's a hidden gem. And as for my dear friend, the A&R guy that fired me, that shit happens. He's a great guy. I never held that against him. And here's the cool thing. Some of the songs that me and that band wrote together ended up on that album. So it wasn't a total loss. But boy, I tell you, it sure didn't feel good at the time. Anyway, getting fired sucks. Even if sometimes it's for the right reasons, it still hurts. It still shakes your confidence and makes you question everything. Your talent, your worth, your future. But here's what I've learned. Sometimes it's not about you. It's about fear or politics or timing or someone else's insecurities. And yeah, it can break your heart, but it doesn't have to break you, because your value is not tied to the jobs you lose. It's tied to the people who still see your worth when the spotlight fades. You know, the friends who stick around, the ones who still call, and the work you're still proud of even if no one hears it. So if you're in that place right now, if you're sitting in the pain of being let go, please hear this. You're going to be okay. You're going to find your rhythm again. And when you do, it's going to be even stronger. I hope you enjoyed this. And if you did, please let me know in the comments. And if you've ever been fired, tell me what you've learned from it. Thanks so much for listening. Take care.